We'll move on to the second variable that we will manipulate in order to reduce the drain-induced barrier lowering, or the DIBL parameter, script L, which you'll recall is the geometric mean of these three vertical depths, the depletion width, the oxide thickness, and the junction depth. And we want to have all of three of those items be as small as possible so that the DIBL parameter can be as small as possible so that there isn't barrier lowering due to the drain voltage. This expression, recall, compares the threshold voltage in a short junction versus what it would be in a long junction. And we want to maintain that long junction threshold voltage. Last time we talked about decreasing the oxide thickness. We really talked about increasing the oxide capacitance. This time we're going to talk about decreasing the depletion width, and we'll talk exactly about that. Now, the depletion width expression given from Chapter 5 has the surface potential at threshold in it, and it has the doping level. It also has the dielectric constant of the semiconductor, epsilon sub s. When you have a subscript on this E, it means permittivity. When you don't have a subscript on the E, it means electric field. So let's use that expression for the depletion width along with the equation 543, which sets up the threshold voltage in terms of the flat band potential, the surface potential at threshold, and this thing. We can get the depletion width into this expression just by eliminating the doping level between these two. So let's go ahead and do that. Eliminate doping. And I'll point out a few things about this expression. First is that the oxide capacitance, which is farads per area, is the permittivity of the oxide divided by the thickness of the oxide, so I'm going to make that replacement. Another thing is that surface potential at threshold depends on the logarithm of the doping level. But logarithm of the doping level is much, much weaker than square root of the doping level. So we will take the surface potential at threshold to be a constant, and we'll just consider the doping level to be a square root dependence here. So go ahead and do the algebra yourself. You make that substitution, eliminate the doping in favor of the depletion width, and you have this new expression. And we look at this expression and think, okay, what can we do to maintain threshold voltage while reducing the depletion width? If you reduce the depletion width, the threshold voltage goes up. You want to maintain the threshold voltage. But if you reduce the depletion width at the same time that you reduce the oxide thickness and at the same rate, then you can maintain the same threshold voltage. And that's exactly what we'll propose doing. Whatever the depletion width changes by, the oxide thickness has to change by the same thing so that the ratio stays constant. That's the goal, the design goal. Here's a problem though. How do you decrease depletion width? But you can increase the doping. But the problem is when you increase the doping, you decrease the mobility of the charge carriers. And normally we want high mobility for high speed transistors. So we don't want to sacrifice speed, so we don't want to sacrifice mobility. And just remind you of the expression in Chapter 2 for mobility as a function of doping level. You increase the doping, you decrease the mobility. So a trick is employed that is also used in the high electron mobility transistors that we had previously discussed. That trick is a doping profile called steep retrograde doping, where at the surface of the semiconductor, right at the oxide interface, the doping level is made very low. And then deeper into the semiconductor, the doping level is very high. So this very high doped semiconductor, which has terrible mobility, nevertheless coughs up a lot of charge carriers, and this surface area has very little doping, therefore high mobility. So when these charge carriers bleed into the lesser doped region, they can move with high mobility, and there are a lot of these carriers. And that's the basic trick. And these carriers will be the minority carriers, because here where we have absolutely no doping, we can pull electrons into here and let them flow. And usually it's the electrons that you rely on because they have even higher mobility than holes. Let's look at this structure then. The metallic gate, the oxide layer, and the semiconducting substrate with a lightly doped skin of thickness T sub rg for retrograde, the retrograde thickness. This is the thickness of the retrograde region. and it's heavily doped deeper in the substrate. We can look at the band diagram then that results, where you have to have some severe band bending downward when you get into this lightly doped region, because it's not nearly as p-type anymore. And if you do bias it with a negative terminal on the p-type, the electrons are chased over here to the interface. And so when you arrive at inversion, you have a very high charge density of electrons in a very small region that you have engineered, the thickness of the retrograde region. And they have very high mobility. These electrons were injected by the power supply and went through the substrate to the lightly doped region, where you end up with a high density of electrons. The band bending is the surface potential. We'll say we're at threshold. We'll look only at threshold, so we'll talk about the surface potential at threshold, which you can depict in either place. And surface potential is just the difference between the band edge deep inside and the band edge at the interface. You have a little bit more depletion. The depletion region will always be a little bit larger than the retrograde region, because whatever you set the retrograde region to, you fill up with minority charge carriers. And then you have a little more region where you still don't have any of the holes. And that's your depletion region, is that whole thing. But you're at least depleted every place where you have the retrograde doping. And so the depletion width is the retrograde doping width plus what's underneath the square root in the original description of depletion width. They're pretty much the same. The retrograde region is much, much larger than what's originally underneath the square root. And so the depletion width and the retrograde thickness are essentially the same thickness. So you can engineer the retrograde thickness to be what you want your depletion width to be. And so we can control what the depletion width is, and we can have very high electron mobility in this region. If you dope very heavily, you have a very thin depletion width, but you have very low mobility. So this is a trick to dope heavily, get your lower depletion width, but control that with this retrograde region, which also then delivers high mobility. We can look at this electrostatically by thinking about how the charge must accumulate on either side of the oxide. On the left side, you have metal, and so the charge will be a thin sheet that just coats the surface. On the right side, you have the retrograde region, which fills up with charge and makes what might be a nearly uniform charge distribution, depending on how this profile looks. But the charge distribution on the right side will look like the profile. And it will be composed of conduction electrons, meaning that you have a positive charge on this side. We'll just call them big Q for the amount of charge over there. Let's do a Gaussian surface analysis. Where are the electric fields high? Where are they low? If I'm deep inside the metal, there's no electric field, so you can write electric field equals 0. Because when you evaluate these Gaussian surfaces, you only need to look at a surface that the electric field has a normal component on, and that would be the flat end walls. Right? We can ignore the cylindrical side walls because the electric field has no component perpendicular to them. And we can ignore this outer flat end wall because there's no electric field there at all. Inside the oxide, there's plenty of electric field. But then deep inside the semiconductor, also no electric field. That's a little less evident. I mean, we say there's no E field inside metals, and we just sort of take that as on face value. But deep inside the semiconductor, there's no electric field because the bands are flat. So there's no potential difference. So where there is the electric field is inside the oxide and also inside charge regions. The charge region in the metal is taken to be infinitesimally thin, but not inside the semiconductor. So inside the semiconductor, there is some electric field, and its potential is volts per meter, and the voltage drop across the retrograde region is the surface potential at threshold. So that's the volts, and the meters is the thickness of the retrograde region. That's the electric field inside the retrograde region. When you get past that, there's no electric field anymore. Problem 7.8 suggests that we just consider the surface potential at threshold to be equal to the band gap. And let's do that here too. We'll just take the surface potential at threshold to be the band gap. So you'd have to imagine these bent down even more, but that's what that problem suggests. For simplicity, perhaps, but it's what it suggests. So let's replace the surface potential at threshold with the energy gap over Q to get in volts. And so I'm basically setting you up for problem 7.8 at this point. Let's evaluate Gauss's law on these two Gaussian cylinders. Just remind you, Gauss's law says that integral of electric field over area, which is electric flux, is enclosed charge divided by the permittivity. But the permittivity changes in this Gaussian cylinder. It's changing material, therefore it's changing permittivity. So how do you handle that? You take the permittivity out of the denominator on the right and you put it into the integral on the left. And so I write it over here instead. So that's the permittivity of the material, whether it's the metal or the oxide or the semiconductor, times the electric field integrated over area is the enclosed charge. So let's look at the left side. So you have no electric field on the flat end wall on the left, but the flat end wall on the right, you do have electric field. We'll just call it E oxide. Electric field E oxide over here. And of course A, which area is the area of that end wall, which comes out of the integral. And that equals the charge enclosed in the cylinder. That's a Gauss's law argument. Let's argue Gauss's law on the right cylinder. Put the cylinder right at the interface here. Then we can talk about what's inside. The electric field inside the retrograde region, we'll say, is the electric field at the flat end wall. And the dielectric constant is that of the silicon now. And then you have minus Q as the enclosed charge, and then no electric field at the other flat end wall. So these are Gauss's law evaluations in those two Gaussian surfaces. Remember, Gauss's law is only useful if everything really, really simplifies down. If you find yourself really doing integrals, you can't solve Gauss's law. Let's eliminate Q between these two expressions. So we have the thing that's 0 for each of them, the end wall where there's no electric field. So we're just left with certain things. So we can eliminate Q between these two equations. We'll do that. And you have the permittivity of the oxide times the E field in the oxide equals the permittivity of the silicon times the E field contained inside the retrograde region. That's nice and simple. We can write these things in terms of some potentials. The electric field in the oxide is whatever the voltage drop is across the oxide divided by the thickness, parallel plate situation. And the electric field in the retrograde region, we had already made the argument, in order to do problem 7.8, we'll take it as the band gap over Q over the retrograde thickness. So put those in and rearrange. So you have an expression for the oxide voltage, the voltage drop across the oxide. Why is that useful? Because now we can go back and get a more useful expression for the threshold voltage. If you're at threshold, that means the gate source voltage is at threshold. We'll employ equation 522, remember that, which relates the gate source voltage to flat band and surface potential and oxide voltage. The gate source voltage at threshold is the flat band potential plus the surface potential at threshold plus the oxide potential. So let's go ahead and replace the surface potential at threshold with the energy gap. And let's go ahead and use this expression for the oxide voltage drop. And we have a new useful expression for the threshold voltage that has the thickness of that retrograde region in it and the thickness of the oxide, which we talked about last time. We've already resigned ourselves to decreasing the oxide thickness. Now we have to think about what we're going to do with the retrograde thickness. So the punchline is that you can either increase the oxide permittivity by changing your material or decrease its thickness. At the same time, decrease the retrograde thickness, and you can keep the threshold voltage the same. So that's how steep retrograde doping is used to reduce the DIBL parameter.